Ferrari expected the stopwatch to explain Lewis Hamilton's weekend in Hungary. It did not. The real shock was hidden inside the car's data, where every braking input, throttle movement, steering correction, and moment of hesitation told a story the final result could never reveal. But there is one crucial problem. The available source does not provide the actual telemetry traces, confirmed lap comparisons, or direct quotations from Ferrari's engineers, so the dramatic headline alone cannot prove exactly what left the team shaken. And that makes the central question even more important. Did Hamilton's data reveal extraordinary performance that Ferrari had failed to recognize, or did it expose a weakness in the car that had been limiting him all weekend? Because telemetry does not care about headlines, reputation, or excuses. It shows what the driver asked the car to do. Then it shows whether the car obeyed. And if Hamilton was making the right decisions while the Ferrari kept forcing him to wait, correct, and compromise, then what actually happened in Hungary was much bigger than one disappointing result. It may have exposed a problem Ferrari could no longer blame on the driver. Subscribe to the channel. To understand why this claim matters, we have to separate what the stopwatch shows from what the car actually reveals. A final result is simple. It tells you where a driver finished, how far he was from the front, and whether the weekend looks successful or disappointing. Telemetry is different. Telemetry records the hidden story of the lap. It shows when Lewis Hamilton applied the brakes, how smoothly he released them when he turned the steering wheel, and how quickly he returned to the throttle. It can reveal tiny corrections that television cameras miss. It can show whether the car responded immediately or whether Hamilton had to wait before trusting it. Think of it like listening to a conversation between the driver and the car. Hamilton makes a request through the steering, brakes, and throttle. The car answers through grip, movement, balance, and speed. When that conversation works, the lap looks natural. The driver commits, the car responds, every corner connects cleanly with the next. When it breaks down, the stopwatch only shows lost time. The data shows where the trust disappeared. And that distinction could be at the heart of what happened in Hungary. The available source presents a dramatic claim. Hamilton's telemetry supposedly left Ferrari shaken, but it does not provide the actual traces, confirmed corner comparisons, or direct comments from the engineers who studied them. That means one thing must remain clear. We cannot honestly claim that Hamilton braked later at a particular corner. We cannot state that he gained a confirmed amount of time in one section, and we cannot present an engineer's reaction as fact when no quotation has been supplied. But the absence of those details creates an even more important question. What would Ferrari need to see in the data for the reaction to be described this strongly? It would have to be something unexpected. Perhaps the telemetry challenged the idea that Hamilton simply lacked pace. Perhaps it suggested that he was adapting his driving around a limitation. Or perhaps it showed that the final result concealed how much work he was doing inside the cockpit. Those possibilities are not confirmed conclusions. They are the questions created by the headline. And this is where the easy explanation begins to fall apart. When a driver has a difficult weekend, the first reaction is usually simple. He was not comfortable. He did not adapt quickly enough. He made a mistake. He could not extract the performance. But Formula One is rarely that simple. A driver can appear slow while protecting tires that are beginning to overheat. He can look hesitant because the rear of the car is moving unexpectedly. He can lose time at the exit because he had to sacrifice the entry just to keep the car under control. From the outside, all of those situations can look like a lack of confidence. Inside the data, they may look completely different. Imagine walking across a polished floor while wearing shoes with almost no grip. Someone watching from a distance might wonder why you are moving so carefully. But you know that one aggressive step could send you sliding. That is the difference between hesitation and control. Sometimes a driver slows down because he is uncertain. Sometimes he slows down because he understands the danger better than anyone watching. And Hamilton's experience makes that distinction especially important. A driver with years at the highest level does not only feel whether a car is fast or slow, he feels how the balance changes through every phase of a corner. He feels what happens when the brakes are applied, He feels whether the front responds when he turns. He feels whether the rear remains stable. Then he feels whether the car allows him to accelerate without creating another problem. One corner contains several separate battles. And if even one of them goes wrong, the damage spreads. Brake slightly earlier, and the car may enter the corner with less speed. Turn later, and the exit line becomes tighter. Wait before applying power, and the lost time continues down the next straight. One small compromise becomes 3. Then those 3 compromises affect the tires. The tires affect the balance. The balance affects the driver's confidence. And suddenly, the entire lap is being shaped by a weakness that began several seconds earlier. That is why telemetry can leave engineers looking at a completely different story from the one shown on the timing screen. The timing screen gives them the consequence. The telemetry helps them search for the cause. But here is where it gets more complicated. Data does not automatically explain everything. A delayed throttle application may show that Hamilton waited before accelerating. It does not immediately prove why. He may have been protecting the rear tires. He may have been avoiding wheel spin. He may have been responding to traffic. He may have felt the car moving beneath him. The trace reveals the action. The driver explains the sensation behind it. That is why the most valuable engineering conversation happens when both stories match. Hamilton describes what he felt. The engineers inspect what the car recorded. If the 2 accounts point toward the same problem, the team has something concrete to investigate. But if they do not match, the mystery becomes deeper. 2. And this may be the first reason Ferrari could have been unsettled. Not because telemetry is dramatic by itself, because telemetry can expose a gap between expectation and reality. Ferrari may expect the car to behave one way based on simulation, setup work, and previous information. Hamilton may feel something completely different on the circuit. Then the engineers open the data, and the data decides whether the problem exists only in perception or whether the car is confirming the driver's warning. That moment can change the direction of an entire weekend. If the data suggests the driver is inconsistent, the team may focus on adaptation. If the data suggests the car is repeatedly creating the same limitation, the responsibility moves elsewhere. Toward the setup, toward the balance, toward the way the car delivers its performance. And that is a far more uncomfortable place for Ferrari to look. Because a driver problem can sometimes be addressed through coaching, preparation, and time. A car problem can require changes that affect everything: qualifying performance, race pace, tire management, strategy, confidence. Even the way Hamilton approaches the next session. And Hungary would make any weakness feel even more severe. The circuit demands precision. Corners connect closely together. A poor moment in one section can damage the next section before the driver has time to recover. It is like missing the first step on a staircase. You may regain your balance, but the entire sequence has already been disturbed. Hamilton would not only be trying to survive one difficult corner, he would be trying to stop that corner from damaging everything that followed. That is why the data could tell a much larger story than the result. If Hamilton was constantly adjusting his driving to keep the lap together, the car might have looked calmer than it truly was. Experienced drivers often hide problems. They correct the movement before it becomes a spin. They release the brake before the front tires lock. They delay the throttle before the rear loses grip. To the viewer, nothing dramatic happens. To the engineer, every correction is evidence. And that creates the most important question in this first part of the story. What if Hamilton's Hungary telemetry did not reveal a driver making obvious mistakes? What if it revealed a driver preventing the car's weaknesses from becoming obvious? Because then Ferrari would not be looking at a disappointing result. They would be looking at performance that had been buried beneath constant compromise. And the next layer is even more serious. If Hamilton was already changing his driving to protect the car, Ferrari would need to determine how much lap time disappeared before he ever reached the visible limit. That is the mystery hidden inside the data. not simply how fast Hamilton was, but how fast he might have been if the car had allowed him to drive without fear of what would happen next. And this is where Ferrari's investigation would become far more uncomfortable. Because once the team stops asking whether Hamilton was fast enough, it has to ask a much more difficult question. What was the car forcing him to sacrifice? That sacrifice might not appear in one dramatic moment. It could appear in dozens of tiny decisions. Slightly earlier brake application, a slower release of the pedal, a smaller steering input, a delayed return to full throttle. Each one looks minor. Together, they can destroy an entire lap. And this is why telemetry can be so revealing. It does not only show where time was lost, it shows how the loss began. The source does not provide Hamilton's actual traces, so no specific corner, speed, or lap time difference can be confirmed. But if Ferrari engineers truly reacted as strongly as the headline suggests, then the data would likely have challenged the simplest explanation. Hamilton may not have been driving below the car's potential. He may have been driving around the car's weakness. That is a completely different problem. Because a driver who is struggling can improve his approach. A driver who is compensating may already be doing everything available to him. And compensation is exhausting. Imagine trying to carry a full glass of water across a moving floor. You can still reach the other side, but every step requires more care. You move more slowly. You react to movements that nobody else can see. And even if you do not spill the water, the effort has already cost you time. That may be the most important way to understand Hamilton's challenge. The car does not need to spin. It does not need to lock a wheel. It does not need to produce a dramatic failure. It only needs to make the driver uncertain. Uncertainty creates caution. Caution creates delay. Delay creates lost performance. And in Formula One, the difference between confidence and doubt can be measured in fractions of a second. Those fractions accumulate. One corner costs a little. The next corner costs a little more. Then the tires begin to suffer. Then the driver changes his approach again. By the end of the lap, the gap looks much larger than the original problem. That is the chain Ferrari would need to understand.